Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived with her parents in a cottage on the edge of a forest. Her father was a woodcutter. He worked all day long in the forest, chopping down trees with his huge axe. Right in the middle of the forest was another cottage. It belonged to the little girl's grandmother. The kind old lady loved her granddaughter very much. So one day she decided to make her a present. It was a red cloak with a red hood to match. The cloak looked so nice that the little girl wore it all the time, and that is why everybody called her Red Riding Hood. But one day the grandmother fell ill. So Red Riding Hood's mother baked her a cake and made her some fresh butter just to make her feel better. Red Riding Hood, called her mother, take this cake and butter to grandmother's cottage. A visit from you will cheer her up. So Red Riding Hood picked up the basket, waved goodbye to her mother, and went off down the path. She hadn't gone very far when she met a wolf. He trotted up, pretending to be friendly. Good morning, Red Riding Hood. What have you got in your basket today? I have some fresh butter and cake, replied the girl. They are for my grandmother, who lives in the middle of the forest. She is ill and needs cheering up. The wolf licked his lips. How I would love to gobble this tasty little girl. But if I'm clever, I can eat her grandmother as well, he sniggered. Red Riding Hood, said the wolf slyly, we will both go to visit your grandmother and cheer her up. I'll race you there. Then the clever wolf said to Red Riding Hood, you follow his path and I will find another one. Then we'll see who reaches grandmother's cottage first. No sooner was Red Riding Hood out of sight than the wolf ran off at top speed. As for Red Riding Hood, she wandered slowly along the path, picking flowers and wild strawberries for her grandmother. She had forgotten all about the race. That wicked wolf knew every secret path and shortcut in the forest. He ran so fast, the animals and birds never even noticed him. Quietly, he crept round a clearing in the trees where the woodcutter was chopping wood. On and on he raced until he came to the middle of the forest. The wolf reached grandmother's cottage in next to no time. He ran up the path and knocked on the door. Who is that? Cried grandmother from her bed. It is Red Riding Hood, replied the wolf in his softest voice. Lift the latch and come right in, the old lady called. The door isn't locked, my dear. The wolf bounded in and swallowed poor grandmother in one bite. That was delicious, sighed the wicked wolf, smacking his lips. Now for Red Riding Hood. The wolf looked round the bedroom. He found one of grandmother's spare nightdresses and her nightcap, so he put them on and as fast as he could. Then he noticed a spare pair of grandmother's glasses, so he stuck them on the end of his nose. Then the wolf jumped into bed and waited for Red Riding Hood. At last, the little girl reached the cottage door and tapped very gently. "Who is it?" asked the wolf, trying to sound like grandmother. "It's Red Riding Hood, and I've brought you some cake and fresh butter." The wolf grinned. "Lift the latch and walk right in," he croaked. So Red Riding Hood opened the door and came inside. "You sound very strange," called Red Riding Hood up the stairs to her grandmother. "I have a cold, my dear," the wolf replied. "Come upstairs so that I can see you." Little Red Riding Hood was rather shocked when she saw her grandmother. She looked so different. "Why, grandmother, what strong arms you have," said the little girl. "All the better to hug you with," replied the wolf. "Why, grandmother, what big ears you have," said the Red Riding Hood. "All the better to hear you with," the wolf cried. "Why, grandmother, what big eyes you have," said Red Riding Hood, staring at him. "All the better to see you with," the wolf grinned. "Why, grandmother, what big teeth you have," gasped Red Riding Hood. "All the better to eat you with," snarled the wolf, and he threw back the bedclothes and leapt out of bed. Poor Red Riding Hood screamed at the top of her voice as the wolf tried to grab her and gobble her up. She escaped from the bedroom and dashed down the stairs, the hungry wolf close behind. Now Red Riding Hood's father was chopping wood nearby, and he heard the little girl's screams. The woodcutter grabbed his huge axe and ran towards the cottage. He saw the wolf chasing Red Riding Hood and guessed what had happened. The brave woodcutter raised his axe and chopped the wolf in two with one blow. The wolf fell dead, and Red Riding Hood was saved. The frightened little girl ran to her father and kissed and hugged him. But what surprise they got when they returned round! But what surprise they got when they turned round! There stood grandmother, safe and sound. Because the woodcutter had chopped the wolf in two, grandmother was able to climb out quite unharmed. So all three went back inside the cottage. They unpacked the basket Red Riding Hood had brought and had some cake spread with fresh butter. Little Red Riding Hood never again went walking in the forest alone. And grandmother took great care to lock her cottage door. Bye-bye.